arrow says go to special land use to verify that anything beyond what is already allowed is acceptable by not infringing on these criteria, which are natural resources, home values, so on and so forth. It's in 24.04.
I don't have the statement in front of me, but I think you do, don't you?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
While you're looking that up, just want to make two comments in regards to natural resources. First of all, there will be more trees per inch replaced than will be taken down. We've already done the study on that. That's the first thing we did. You'll see that in the next go around if we get to that stage, Mr. Chairman. We've done that study. Number two, there's empirical data that's been submitted to you. With the 61 homes, remember, there's more building coverage. There's more driveway coverage. There's all the other more coverage. So, in regards to the preservation of the natural resources and the trees, there would be more trees taken down with the 61 homes by right. Of course, we still have to replace those trees, but there would be more trees taken down than would be done through our development. We have the building coverage data, and that's real important. There's 17% less building coverage. There is significantly less impervious surface with our proposal than the 61 homes by right. So let's get through the hogwash that the natural resources will be greatly impacted than what is by right. There will be an impact, but there'll be replacement. We have taken all due care in regards to preservation of those. We will be replacing significantly more inches than what will be taken down, as we've done in all our developments, and what is done clearly by ordinance and by your consultants.
You had Mr. Moshe, while you're there, I'm recalling a chart in one of your supplemental information, but now we've had one of those each month for the last half a dozen months. I don't recall which one, but you had indicated, off the top of my head, I thought it was an 11% would be the open space if developed under these 61 homes.
Correct.
Is that right? So, significantly less. I think we discussed that last month.
And you had nearly 20%, or I think about 24%, if it was done as a conventional multifamily development. But we still have double that. But under a Kings Point, how many residents here live in Kings Point? Okay. We have 6.25% of open space in Kings Point. 47% for Blossom Ridge. How many live in Hills of Oakland? You have 15% open space.
Can I object to that?
No, you cannot object to that. That's a fact.
That's not a fact. Mr. Chairman,
That's
I wasn't going to say something, but now I have.
No, excuse me. This is not a debate. So these are facts.
This is a debate. These are telling a falsehood.
Excuse me. I developed these neighborhoods. I know the exact acres, know the amount of open space, and Mr. Westfall did the planning.
It's not your yard. It's
Okay.
open reserve space.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
It's not.
He's sleeping facts.
He's stating the way they understand it. It's not wrong. He's not counting your yard.
That's what
He's counting reserve open space. There's a different designation. You guys understand it?
You're right.
The reserve open space for which we could put a driveway going down to the backyard and bringing cars through the lower level.
Community area.
So let's continue.
Community area. Grass.
Mr. Chairman, can we get some order here, please?
Just first a point. Mr. Serta, I think you're off base there because, as Mr. Buss was just trying to explain to you, however out of order it may have been, he's right. When we look at open space here, we look at a parcel. We look at the space on the parcel. Not on your lot or my lot, on the parcel.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just back to the preservation of trees, the point I want to make that the concerns are very valid concerns, but also there is greater preservation of those trees with our proposal versus the 61 homes. And that data has been presented to you earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Blust also mentioned need to have an assessor to evaluate the impact on surrounding homes. I think we have a a standard that we'll get into later in our discussion that may address this. We've not discussed whether having an assessor do an evaluation of whether it will impact your home or somebody else's home or the homes in general. We do have a standard to consider, and it's one of character. The one of character may address some of these questions. We have to get into that. We do have to consider the impact on the surrounding areas, the homes in the surrounding areas, so it certainly is part of our consideration and discussion. Mr. Blush, you also mentioned the 3 to 5 units in density in the high density conservation, which would overlay that parcel. I think, well, I can't put my fingers on this at the moment. I recall a graphic that showed this proposal in comparison to not only high density conservation, but a medium density, also the MRD and whatever else, help me out here, applicant. Well, I know the master plan recommended 35, but you had a graphic in one of your supplements, and again, I don't have it at my fingertips. We've already discussed this, but if the commissioners would find benefit in going through that graphic again, I think we discussed it last month or the month before, so it's in one of those supplementals. Mr. Blust, you suggested that for trying to find, that we should be trying to find a good example to follow, and we don't have that yet. We have seen this sliced up a number of different ways against high density conservation, medium density conservation, the, I don't know what else they were. But we have looked at this from not just one point of comparison, but a number of different points of comparison. That's something that we have taken into our consideration here. So,
Pages 12 through 16,
of which supplement?
dated October 19th.
Could I see that, please?
Yes.
I've got it back there in my pile. I brought October, I brought November, December, and then bring October. Thank you. Yes, this is what I was referring to. Just for the commissioner's sake, and Mr. Blust, the amount of building area in Blossom Ridge compared to an MRD development, a development using the master plan recommended density of 3 to 5 units per acre, that's the high density conservation, and an RM development. Total square footage of buildings, Blossom Ridge would be 17% smaller than either an MRD development or a 3 to 5 unit per acre density development, and 26% smaller than an RM development. There are charts detailing all this. Unless the commission feels that they need to have this comparison in actual numbers, we've already discussed this in detail. This would have been the November meeting. It's an October 19th submittal, right? So it's been a November meeting. We discussed this. Hang on to that in case we do.
But can I comment real quick? The justification isn't growth in size. The justification is density. The density is what you're trying to verify. What are you doing to justify going from 5, which is a maximum part of the master plan? You can go to 5 with no issue because the master plan says to. You're trying to get a variance to go to 7.38, and you guys have to figure out what have you done to justify it. Right now, it's roof area.
What is the
density impact? And
Mr. Blust, you're a smart guy. You've been hanging around these meetings for a long time. You've heard a lot of our discussions. You know a lot of the issues that we consider from the Planning Commission. So I'll put you on the spot and ask you, why are we concerned about these density calculations? What does that matter? From a planning, not what does it matter if you're a resident that lives in the hills? Well, what does it matter from a planning perspective?
Do it the other way. If you have, oh, there's one other number right in front of me, but if you use an equal number of trips, it's 170 units.
Let's not get off track. Why do we consider? Why is density important?
Density affects the number of traffic, It affects the number of houses that you're going to be, the size of the facilities you're going to be building. You're not going to have, the person's not going to get a bigger bedroom and say it's one bedroom. And so that's roof area. It's how many residents, how many are you going to have for impact? So you're putting 7.3 units on an acre. An acre doesn't change size. Justify 7.38 is okay as compared to 5.
The reason we're concerned with density, if I may answer my own question, from a planning perspective, well, you didn't. I gave you the chance to do it. You only partially did, so.
It wasn't done.
Well, I know, but we have to move on.
I don't
So
know that.
the reason we look at density is we want to know the impact of the proposed development. We want to consider that impact in comparison to what it would have been if it was developed as it is currently zoned, a 61 single-family home subdivision. We use a number of things, your favorite, the test plan, and other such things to consider that. We look at the impact on the natural resources. What does it do to the trees? What does it do to the wetlands? What does it do to the, what kind of water runoff issues are there in the proposed development? A single-family home development with 61 homes would have more road service, would have more impervious structure, whether it's rooftops or roads or whatever they happen to be, because it is not as tightly packed as this development given a use. You couldn't pack people in this closely if it wasn't a retirement community. But because it is a retirement community, they are able to pack people in a little bit more closely, i.e. increase density. If they can increase density with an acceptable level, doesn't have to be less, doesn't have to be minimal, an acceptable level, which is a judgment call by the Planning Commission. If it's an acceptable level of impact, then it could pass. We can consider that. It turns out that they have tried to justify their acceptable level of impact in comparison to show that it is less, to show that the impact on traffic is less, in their opinion. We don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with it. Less of an impact on traffic because there's less impact at peak times of the day. You don't have to agree with it. That's their argument. They have an increase in traffic overall. That leaves us something to consider. Are we willing to take that trade-off of an increase in traffic, 24% overall, versus a lower impact on peak time traffic? That's something for us to consider. They could say this proposal is saving 47% open space versus 11%. We might like that. We might like the view shed stuff. We might not like it. We haven't decided anything here in terms of recommendation. So these are the things that are in this proposal that they have submitted for our consideration. We don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree with it. But they are things that they have offered. Yes, there is a trade-off in the density compared to something that in our master plan says high-density conservation. Unfortunately, while our master plan was updated 6 years ago and ratified again last year, meaning reviewed, evaluated, and deemed by this commission to be still valid just last year, that's a master plan, which is a guiding document. You and I have gone over this many times before. Our zoning ordinances, unfortunately, are the ones that we're currently using, are the ones that were originally put in place, and I always get this wrong, 73 or 74. Not that they haven't been updated and modified sometimes over the time since then, they have. But in this particular issue, they don't speak to senior living center. If they did speak to senior living center, one thing I can assure you, the density components of that would likely be higher given the nature of the use, regardless of whether it was a Mosheri proposed development or somebody else's, regardless of whether it was on that corner or somewhere else's, the density calculation for a retirement community would no doubt be higher if it existed in our planning ordinance that we presently use. Unfortunately, we don't have that. What we do have is the ability to make a judgment call as appointed members, appointed by the elected officials,